Okay, ladies, today we're doing a tutorial on how to print out and use the CFRPM 1 daily model. This is really a top level. Actually, this is how to get results out of it, not anything in detail. And so we're going to start out with clicking on the catalog key, the catalog file, CFRPM 6.1 daily. We only want the daily results. We don't really need peak hour. And I want you to notice a few things out of the box. First of all, your sidebar might not look exactly the same as mine. So you may get confused on where to look. So you're looking for the scenario because you need to select which scenario you're going to use. Obviously, if your app window ever goes away, that's the welcome window, we don't need it. If your app window ever goes away, you can go into this app window and double click on it and it'll pull this back up. These are your catalog keys and they change from model to model, but not by much. So in this case, I'm going to select this particular model because I just ran it clean, so you'd have an example. And I want to show you a few things on this page. The first thing I want to show you is that if you hit Shift S, not Control S, Shift S, it'll show you the file sizes. And each of these file sizes are the size for each individual file. That's important because you need to know if the files actually exist. If they don't exist, if the model hasn't run through, it'll show something like this, which you see all these deleted. Each one of these deleted means that that file hasn't been generated yet and it doesn't exist in the directory. So we're going to go back to our regular model, make sure it's still there, and we'll hit Shift S again to close that. And the next thing you need to see with this model is if you're going to make changes to this particular model, you can see the ZData 1 and 2 files are over here. But this unloaded net is purple. And normally that would mean that's the file that you would modify to change the network to be able to do a run. Unfortunately, in this case, it's not the case. The file that you need to modify actually isn't even on this window. So you need to click on Highway Network. And the file that you need to modify is down here, and it's the base network, base 20C net. It's usually orange, and I don't know why it's not on the home page, but it's not. If you press F9, that takes you right back up. And we're going to look inside the loaded net file. That's highway load C20, and that's the file that has all of the outputs. So we're going to double click on that, and it brings up the network. We don't really need this legend, so we're going to exit out. And as you can see, this is the Central Florida regional area. It includes Ocala, Orlando, DeLand, Daytona, Brevard County, Lakeland, Polk County, Kissimmee, all of those areas. Okay? And we need to find where our zone is. Now, if you actually know the zone number, you can click on that little dot with 3 dots inside, and you can put the node number in. In this case, it's 1015. And then take a couple of digits out of this, doesn't matter which ones, because you want a smaller window, and that'll take you directly to the zone. That's the easy way if you actually know the zone number, but you don't always know the zone number. So we're going to go back out. This little earth thing will take you all the way out to the whole network again. And the way that you actually zoom in is you click on this little plus sign. When you click on the magnifying glass with the plus sign, it changes your cursor to a magnifying glass with a plus sign in the magnifying glass. And we're going to zoom in right there, okay? And maybe a little closer. There we are. Now that might be a little too close. So I'll show you that the zoom out is here. It's right next to it. It's a magnifying glass with a minus sign. And of course that changes your cursor again. We don't need to zoom out very far, and this one works on a percentage basis. So we do a fairly large window, and it only goes out a bit. So that will actually help us move in and out. Of course, this is pan, so this will move us left and right. But of course, we don't need to move left and right anymore. We're about where we need to be, so we need to select this pointer. When we select the pointer, we use it to pick the link. Now, I didn't pick the link. I actually selected the zone. well, not the zone, I selected a node on the roadway. And you can tell that it's a node because it's a very short list. There's not much data in it. Most of it's zeros. The county shows up as 2, which happens to be Orange County. The MPO is MetroPlan. And the geometry source is probably also MetroPlan. So you can tell that this is a node list because it's a very short list. So I'm going to X out of that, and then I'm going to click on the link itself. Now that's what we're looking for. And I'm going to start up at the top. You can see A and B are the 2 nodes that are the ends of this link. So 1015 is our project node, and 18225 is the node that connects to the roadway. And remember that those are there. We're going to use it in a minute. And then we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we're going to look and find the total volume. And the total volume in each direction is 203.29. See, they're the same. And the total two-way volume is 406.58. But we need to check that 203 against our selected total. And we can see that they're the same, which means that we've got the right zone. We're dealing with the right link, and that is the selected zone that this run is for. If it wasn't, say for instance, if we clicked on this link, we would see that the selected total is 8, but the total two-way volume is 3,300 almost. So we know that that's not the selected zone. So we go back to this, we see that they match, that's a good thing, and we want to write down this total two-way volume, 406.58. So I put it down in my calculator just so I'd have it on a piece of scratch paper. Okay, now I'm going to X out of that. And then the next thing we have to do is actually create the values for the distribution. When we looked in this variable, there is no value for distribution. So we have to create one. So we're going to go up here to link, and we're going to hit compute, and that brings up a link attribute calculation field. And in this case, there's actually 2 variables. I've actually put in the formulas ahead of time. So the first variable is cell tote 2, which is the two-way selected total, selected volume total. And the way that you get that is you add the selected total to the reverse direction. The .r refers to the reverse direction for the same selected total. Now, if I double click on that, it brings up the equation, and I hit OK, but it says result attribute not found, add new attribute. And I want to say yes. So the first time right after you've run a model, even if these calculations are already there, you need to double click on each one and make sure you add the attribute in before you hit apply. And of course, distribution is the total two-way volume for the selected volume, right? Divided by the number of trips coming out of the selected zone. Remember, we wrote that down before, and then we multiply it by 100 to get the percentage in whole numbers. So we're going to save that. And of course, it didn't find that as an attribute either, so we're going to add that as an attribute as well. And now the attributes are added, but the calculation has not been done. So we need to hit apply. And that'll take a couple of seconds for the circle to go around and do the calculations. And now we have 64,000 links updated. So now that we've got everything applied and all of the calculations have been done for all the links, we're going to close that. And we're going to go back to the Home tab. And on the Home tab, we're going to hit Post All. And Post All brings up posting selection. And on this, I already have dist listed. Now, if it wasn't listed, it would probably show you something like that, which is okay, not a problem. If you've just added the attribute, then the attribute should be at the bottom of the list. If the attribute was already there, you've pulled up a file that you've already modified, then it'll be somewhere in the middle of the list, and dist.r will be at the bottom. But you really want dist, okay? So we're going to post dist. And the dist that we want to post is a very specific subset of all of those volumes. So if I get rid of that right now and I post that right now, I have an awful lot of zeros and a lot of numbers that match on both sides. I don't really want the numbers that match on both sides. I only want it to show on one side. So we're going to hit post all again, and we're going to put in some selection criteria. And the selection criteria looks like this. B is greater than A, or, and that's the vertical line that's right above the inner key, A dot R equals 0, and dist is greater than 0.5. What this says is, remember there was a B node and an A node. So we only want the segments where the B node is greater than the A node. That's that first column. Remember we had, the first column had the project zone and then the node number that's on the roadway. And of course the project zone is lower than the node number on the roadway. And that means that that's the first side that'll show up. But what happens if it's a one-way link? There's not, you might have a one-way link where the A node is higher than the B node, and then you wouldn't have any numbers listed at all on that one-way link. So the way to fix that is you do A dot R, you check to see if A dot R is equal to 0. Because if it's a one-way link, there won't be an A dot R, and it'll default to 0. We also really don't want to show any distribution numbers that are less than 0.5. If it's less than 0.5, it'll actually show up in the distribution as a 0. And I really don't want that. I don't want zeros clogging up everything. And so just to get rid of them, because we're rounding to the nearest 1%, we're going to eliminate anything that is 0.5% or less. Okay? And that cleans that up quite nicely. So now we have a distribution that only shows numbers to the nearest 1%. Now, if you wanted to show them to a more detailed percentage, we could round them to the nearest 0.1%, and that will put in 0.1s, or the decimal place, one decimal place all over the place. But Target tends to like only single decimal places, so we'll go back and round to the nearest 1%. So now that we have all of our distribution, we need to go ahead and print it. So we go over to the tab that says File, and we go down to Print. And you might have several options for your printer. In this case, I tend to prefer the 7PDF printer. I don't have the Adobe printer, and I don't trust it quite as well. Sometimes it doesn't actually print well. 7PDF is a third-party freeware printer that you can just go online and find. It works really well, especially with very large data sets like this one. And when you hit OK, it'll bring up a dialog window that shows where it's actually going to save it. And so we're going to put in test, because this is going to be a test print. So we saved it as a test. I already had a file up there that was test, so we're going to save it, and it's going to ask if it wants to overwrite it, and I'm going to say yes. And so it's going to create the file, and I have it set up so it automatically shows me the file, and this is what it looks like. Now, when we looked here, when I said to print this, it was horizontal, right? But when it comes out, unless you specify otherwise, it's going to show you vertical. And if you look at it closely, this is about what my window showed. But because it's portrait and the aspect ratio is different, it shows more to the north and more to the south than what was shown on the screen. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to plan for it up front. And of course, because it was so small, it doesn't actually show the 100 here. You just have to account for that. If you want to show the 100 there, you're going to have to zoom in a little closer and reprint it. Now, the last step on these prints is that you take this in Acrobat Reader and you use the fill and sign tool. And that gives you a little icon that shows an A-B, and so you place that where you want to put your text. You're going to type in CFRPM 6.01, and I'm going to put in test plot. Okay? When you click back on, you still have the arrow, but to be able to save that. It's not permanent yet. It's not permanent until you hit save. And we'll go ahead and save it. And hit yes. And now your plot is ready to put in your figures. And all you have to do is close this. Do I want to change this? Do I want to save the changes? Well, if you don't want to have to redo that calculation step again, you would hit yes. But remember, if you're not redoing that calculation step, it will actually save all of these percentages so you can pull it up again. But when you go to pull it up in post all, dist will no longer be down at the bottom of the list. It'll be somewhere in the middle. But if you change I'll show you where you can change it so that this dist will show up again. I'm going to go ahead and save this configuration with a name. And what I'm saving is actually the VPR file, the Viper file. And I'll show you where that is in a second. So again, we're going to close it. And I'm going to go ahead and save the changes. And I'm going to save the project files. You see that output.vpr. That's the Viper file. That's the format that you see right in front of you right now, including the variable. So I'm going to hit yes. And I'll show you what that does. So when I pull up highway load again, all of my colors are the same, which of course is not a surprise because I had already set it up for these colors in the first place. And I'm going to zoom in. My node size for my project node is the same. Nothing's posted yet because I haven't hit post all yet, but you can see that distribution is now listed as an option and dist is there. And again, now it's in the middle of the list instead of at the end. And I'm going to hit OK. And it adds back the numbers in without me having to do anything at all. So now if I needed to say Turget didn't like my plot and I need to print it again, I'll go to 7 PDF again and I will print again, but this one will be test close because it's all close up. And I'm going to save it. And again, now you can see that it's 100%. And of course, I'll go back in, fill in sign, and put CFRPM 6.01 and test plot. Just happens to save it in mine. I don't know if it'll save it in yours. And then we hit save. We make sure we're saving it to the right place. Make sure we're saving it to the right name. And you will have to replace when you add the text to it. That's about it. There's an awful lot more to the model than this, but if all you have to do is print it out, that is a fast and easy way to do that. There's one other trick within actually making the original network that you need to watch out for, but other than that, this should be enough to get you started and give you a good way to actually be able to do the things you need to do. Have a great week.